Hello, guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Skills and Abilities. Today, we're going to be going over another skill and ability. It's called Blade Warp. Blade Warp is rather interesting. It's kind of like a mix between like a teleport and like a Mosaic Sins, like a kicking attack. Where the Mosaic Sins teleport, or rather the Assassin's teleport, is a teleport that essentially pulls you toward a monster. And teleport makes you go where you want to go. This one is sort of like somewhere in the middle. It doesn't necessarily pull you toward a monster. It pulls you toward where you want to go, right? So, let's take a look at it real quick, and then we'll start to talk about it. So, if you use it, it throws your weapon, and the weapon lands. And then when the weapon lands, it teleports you to where the weapon goes, which basically means you have full control over where you're going. But you do have to actually throw your weapon there to actually cause it to happen. When the weapon lands, it does kind of do like a little bit of damage to the target because it is an actual like blade throw. And it seems to be magical damage at that, so it can potentially even be used as an attack by simply just holding down the button like this to kill a monster, which is also kind of interesting. As a magic damage ability that also like dishes out damage. It does have a casting delay though of zero point 0.8 seconds, which if you were to translate that out into like frames, I believe that's what 25 minus 20%, which is what 20 frames. So I think it's a 20 frame casting delay. 20 frames basically means that you can't teleport any faster than that, but you can of course try and decrease your specific delay. Now looking at the two, I have a faster cast wand here. And the faster cast one seems to be increasing the blade warp. And then we have a attack speed wand here. I'm not exactly sure which one is actually increasing it and which one isn't. I really don't know. With the delay, it's very hard to tell, and you'd probably have to count the number of warps over a very long period of time. Because even if faster cast or attack speed is affecting the calculation of the warp, you still have the base delay involved. And so basically how most of this stuff works with a delay, you are going to sit here and you are going to look at it like this. So we said it's 20 frames, right? Well, if you have a base like faster cast rate of say like 10 frames, then that adds to the 20. Which means that it's going to be a maximum of like 30 there. Or if your weapon is a very particularly slow weapon, it could potentially slow down by adding a huge delay onto the effect. Like for instance, if we're using Death and you were teleporting with Death, Death is a particularly slow base, but it doesn't seem to be changing the overall cast speed. So I'm not exactly sure if cast speed, faster cast, or even having a slow weapon is really going to affect this ability much at all, due to the fact that it already has its own default 20 frames built in. But you can reduce at least the small amount of cast speed that your specific delay causes. Like for instance, if you're a character and you have like a really bad cast speed of say like 14, and you manage to bring that down, like for instance 14 plus 20 is 34, and you manage to bring that down to like a 7 frame cast speed, well then it would be 20 plus 7 equals 27. So you'd be able to bring down the speed by a minor amount and increase the overall cast of your weapon. Now, Blade Warp is actually kind of a nice ability for teleporting around, but it does have issues like obstacles. So, for instance, if you hit an obstacle, it does cause that to get in the way, and you can't actually go through there. However, you can, of course, throw it through doorways, and you can get out of the rooms that way. If you throw with a monster nearby, like for instance, if there's a monster in front of you and you try and throw past the monster, it a lot of the times will just hit the monster that's directly in front of you. It depends on like how you're doing. Actually, I was thinking about miasma chains when I thought about that. No, it seems to be working properly, so you can teleport past the monster. Yeah. So you could use it to dynamically entry into a pack. You could use it to exit a pack. But the delay does make for a little bit more, trying to think of the term, tactical. You have to be a little bit more tactical about how you're doing it. You can't just hold down the button because you're going to be inside that pack for zero point 0.8 seconds plus the time it takes for the weapon to travel to the target. Now, this also means that short teleports are going to be faster than long teleports. In fact, you can clearly see that I'm having to wait on the delay when I do short teleports. Whereas if I'm doing long teleports, I don't have to wait on the delay because the zero point 0.8 seconds is done by the time the weapon manages to land, which means that somewhere in the middle is like a sweet spot of like the exact distance that zero point 0.8 seconds takes for your weapon to throw, so that the timer is then like ended before your next teleport is over. And if you go with short teleports going back and forth between packs, you're going to have to deal with that delay. All in all, I actually really enjoy this teleport over the regular one. Is it inferior to the regular teleport like that the sorceress has? Yeah, it is inferior. It doesn't go through obstacles. You can't teleport through walls and things like that unless there's a way for you to throw your dagger through the wall. It also has some issues in like Act 2 I've noticed as well. Like as you're going through some of the zones that have like the up and the down zones, like you can go down because of the travel of the dagger, but you can't go up because it's harder to throw the dagger up the hill than it is to throw the dagger down the hill, which is kind of interesting. The Blade Warp ability does have some synergies with Mirrored Blades and Echoing Strike, where it increases the damage. So I guess you could technically even use it as like a main ability. So if you're using Echoing Strike and you're using Mirrored Blades, you can get the magic damage up pretty high. The other kind of interesting things with the Blade Warp is that you can obviously use it as very strictly as an offensive sense to teleport between packs, which is actually really useful, especially if you're using like Eldritch Blast or Hex Purge, which have these like really cool explosions and whatnot. All in all, it's definitely a very good 1-point wonder. Gives you a free teleport that you can utilize, and it's very effective. It honestly is a kind of like test in my eyes. Like I almost feel like Blade Warp was a test by the developers to see if they could make a less effective version of teleport that people would still enjoy. And my personal opinion, I'd be fine if they replaced regular teleport with this. Like, I think regular teleport's too OP. It's always been too OP. And Blade Warp seems to be more of a, like, medium ground between the two. Like, it's not quite as restrictive as the Dragon Kick or whatever on the Assassin, but it's not quite as ridiculously broken as the teleport on Sorceress. It's a good middle ground between the two, and the delay on it as well as the tactical awareness of it would make bots have a very hard time. And this is kind of like the most important thing here in my eyes, is that bots are literally only as effective as they are because they have access to teleport. But if Blade Warp was what teleport was instead, bots would have a tremendously hard time doing anything because it actually requires somebody at the helm, essentially, to guide the Blade Warp in the correct locations away from the monster packs. I think the bots would die all the time if they had to use Blade Warp. Whereas a player who is actually actively, like playing the game, is going to make the correct decisions and teleport to the correct locations. Whereas a sorceress using teleport doesn't have to use their brain. They can literally just hold down the button and teleport directly to where they need to go as fast as they possibly can with very limited brain functionality in the mix. I just think that Blade Warp in general just represents a much better version of teleport that actually requires interaction from the player, as opposed to the current version, which requires basically no interaction whatsoever. I think that's pretty much it for this ability. It does have a kind of a high mana cost of 15. I wonder if the mana cost goes up as it levels. Let's check that real quick. Nope, stays pretty much the same. Base 15. So no matter what. So even as a 1-point wonder, it's a free teleport. Maxed out, it could potentially be a damage ability that you could use to kill monsters. Like, for instance, it does magic damage. So you could use it as your way to kill physical immunes early on in the game if you have the synergies maxed out. As always, I'd appreciate you guys and gals watching. Be sure to let me know what you think about Blade Warp. Do you like it better than Teleport? Do you hate it? Do you think it should replace Teleport? Do you think that the addition of Blade Warp is meaningless because Teleport still exists? Let me know. As always, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe button if you enjoy the content, and keep watching.